Hello, my name is Derek, and one thing I've seemed to notice in society is that we have gotten away from being able to use tools as efficiently as we have in the past. Many people, they have jobs now where they work, at a desk all day, and my channel is supposed to bring some of that stuff back to, the average person that doesn't have experience using tools. So if you are heavily experienced in using this stuff, this probably isn't the channel for you. However, if you work an office job and maybe you're not familiar or too embarrassed to ask about things, this is a great place to, come watch a video, learn how to use, some of these common tools that we'll be talking about. Um, so yeah, let's get started. Anyhow, today we're going to be doing hammers and punches. Very basic tools, but there's many different applications you can use them for. So to start with, we'll be going over claw hammers. So here I have two claw hammers. Basically, these are really good tools for when you're doing any kind of construction work. They're used to drive in nails into wood, and they also have this claw section in the back that is used to get under a nail and pull up on it. Now you'll notice that I have two different types here. If you notice, the angle that the claw is different. This is going to have an effect on when you're pulling your nail out, as far as like the leverage that you get. So if you have a bigger nail, you're going to want more leverage. You're going to want one that comes out further, maybe doesn't have as much of a sweep. That's something to keep in mind. Now, a tool that goes hand in hand with this type of hammer is this type of pry bar right here. What a lot of people use this for in construction is to bang on this and get under a nail on this side to pull up on it when you're doing demolition work. Say you're taking apart a deck, or trying to get old wood off a house. This and this combo right here is going to be what you're after. I'm not going to specify any brands. Use what you want. Use what you can afford. Harbor Freight is a good place to go if you want something cheap. Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever, it don't matter. Anyhow, so yeah, this one here, this pry bar, you're gonna hit it like this to get under the nail and then pry up on it. If you're in a tight corner, you can also take it like this and hit on it and get in there and pry up on it. It also works good for like molding. If you need to get under a piece of molding and pry up on it, it works good to pop off molding off a floor. So moving on, let's get to some of these other hammers and such. So these are ball peen hammers. They're not going to be what you want to use for demolition and nail work. They're more for like automotive type applications. You're going to want to get one of these for, say you're trying to break a piece loose like a ball joint on a car, or you just want to knock a bolt through that's stuck that you can't pull out through with your hand. These are going to be the kind of hammers that you're going to want to use in that situation. The ball is great if you need to like make your own gasket. Say you've got some part that you've took apart and it needs a gasket and you can't find it anywhere. You can buy the material to make the gasket, and what you can do is you can put it over top the bolt holes and put that in there and strike it with another hammer. And what it's going to do is cut that gasket, that hole out, so that you have a good mark, and your bolt holes can go through there. You don't have to cut it with a razor. This smaller one is great for like when you're trying to knock out little small like keeper pins and just generic work when you're trying to be a little more finesse with it. You don't want to break something. A lot of times they'll use like pins and plastic parts in these newer cars, and you don't want to get your big gigantic hammer out to knock a pin out of a plastic part. What you're going to want is your smaller one. This is, I want to say it's 4 ounces. It's pretty light. It's easy to swing. This one here is a dead blow version, so it has beads inside here. So what happens is when you strike something, the beads come up and then they slam back down, and it doesn't bounce. So like when you hit something with this hammer, it's gonna bounce off like that right there, where this one is just gonna hit, and all the force from the hammer is going to go into the object you're striking. So essentially that's what that is for. If you're trying to like knock loose ball joints, this is good. Also this hammer right here would be good for ball joints. All right, let's get moving on here a little bit. So these are non-marring hammers, and they're good for work if you're trying to knock a part loose that you want to keep, that you don't want to mess up. You know, say the threads on like a tie rod or whatever. This is the type of hammer you're going to want to go for. You don't want to get a metal cased hammer or something like this, because you're going to mar up the threads and then the part won't be usable. So this is also a dead blow. It has the pieces of the metal pellets inside here, so it'll give you a lot of force when you're striking something. One thing I've used, which y'all probably will never do, use these a lot for, is striking on caps on lug nuts on big trucks, because they're chrome and they're really thin metal, so they'll mark up real easy and they'll bend. So like hubcaps are a good thing if you need to kind of lightly go around and, you know, get it on there. They're not gonna mark it up too bad. Let's see, what else would be a good use for this? Yeah, just basically any kind of item you're not gonna want to mark up. Say you're trying to knock out a pin and you don't want to mar up the ends because you're gonna need to reuse the pin. You know, it's gonna mar up the hammer, but it ain't gonna mar up the pin. Depending on how bad the pin is stuck, you may not be able to do that. You may have to use a metal hammer to do it, and you may end up having to get a new pin on an item, like I say, like a tractor or a piece of equipment. All right, moving on. So back to the metal mini sledgehammer. This is very useful. If you got a tractor or mowers, pieces of equipment, this is great for when you really need to get power on something. Maybe you got like a steel wheel off a lawnmower that doesn't hold a lot of air, but it's bent and it's causing issues. You can knock that wheel back, you know, a little dent in the wheel back out, and possibly use it on like a mower. You're not going to want to do that on anything you drive on the road, obviously. And again, you know, do this at your own risk. You got to make a judgment call on that. I can't tell you that it's going to be safe or not, because I don't know the situation. But it's great for knocking out pins. A lot of times you can get like a punch here to put on the end of a pin, and you knock that pin out, and say the pin goes into whatever's holding it, so your punch will be in here, and you can then strike it with the hammer. That'll generally get it out. One thing I wanted to bring up as far as punches is concerned, you know, they go hand in hand with hammers. A lot of them will have different types of heads on there, and you're like, this is for cutting. So like, say you needed to cut a piece of metal, you could do that. Like, I don't know what reason you'd have, but say you needed to cut this right here, you could strike that along there and it would cut it. A lot of times what ends up happening is you'll take your dikes, and this cotter pin will be rusted into the pin, the holes that it sits in. You'll try to, you know, pull it out, and this little piece will break off, and then you'll come over here to this side and try to do it, and that little piece will break off, and you'll have a piece of metal stuck in your pin. What you can do is you can get another little punch like this right here, and you can put it in there, and you can usually knock that back out. It helps out a lot, and that occurs mostly on northern equipment that's been ran in salt, or southern equipment that's been used in salt, or like agriculture purposes, been left outside. Anything that gathers a lot of rust, you're going to run into those issues. You know, a lot of times you're not going to want to have to break out a torch. So like, this is just really easy to do. Most of the time it'll work. There's several different kind of punches. Keep in mind they have different applications. So like this one here, it has a hole in the end and then a little slot here, and what that's for is you put it on an item like say a piece of leather or rubber or plastic or whatever, and you can punch it, and it'll punch a hole in it, and then the piece that it punched out will come out through there. It's great. Like, I can't think of too many examples. Like making gaskets, it works good for that if you needed to make a gasket. This brass punch is of a different metal, and what it's designed to do is, say you have something that you don't want to mark up, another bolt or whatever, and you don't want to mark it up. The brass is a softer metal than steel, so when you go and use brass to knock on it, it's going to give the force, but the brass is going to be what takes the force. You know, it's going to be what mars up. You're not going to mar up your bolt or whatever you're trying to knock loose with brass, since it's a softer metal than what you're working on. That's something to keep in mind if you're trying to save parts. Use brass punches. And some of these parts, some of these pins can cost hundreds of dollars on some of this equipment. So let's see. I believe that's about it. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good day.